And off we go.
Woohoo. You get to start because I'm talking.
I get to start. Hello and welcome to episode 82 of Building a U-Shaped Business with Georgie and Patty.
I'm Georgie.
And I'm Patty. And welcome. Woohoo. Yeah, woohoo 82. There we go.
82. That is awesome.
Who'd have believed that we'd start something in March and still be going in October?
Right? I know. Who would have thought something that we thought we would do for 5 days is now however many months.
It's now episode 82.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a believer. We're thrilled to have one of the monkeys in the audience.
That is awesome. So awesome. So today's show, as I mentioned, there's no slides. This is more of a conversational, it's going to be a conversational show today. I'm kind of backing up to, we've done the show before a little bit around, kind of what we learned this week, and then doing some Q&A and questions and answers, things that have come up. So that's what this is going to look like today. As we tell everyone else, just a little experimentation to see what happens. So that's really cool. I kind of love that comment actually in the chat there about being a believer, and I'm just going to play off that for a second, and going back to the ultra thing. So some of you know that I've started running again, with the goal of doing an ultra, some kind of ultra marathon, ultra race at some point. I'm not too attached to when that happens, but it will happen. But when I said I was going to do it, the guy who I've now hired into my coach, but he was like, Georgie, he goes, I would be honored to be your pacer for your first ultra. And I was like, it's so awesome when you have someone that believes in you when you've never actually even taken the first step. I'm not even a runner. I haven't even started running. And then you have someone that's like, but I'll pace you for your first ultra. Like, it's like going from 0 to has to be over 26 miles or whatever to be an ultra. But I think when you have someone who really, really believes in you, just because of, I guess, who you are is kind of awesome. And I think that's kind of what I see what Patty and I do too, is really believing in people. Like, I know we really, really believe you can build a U-shaped business. You can build it in a way that works for you, that's based on who you are, without having to fit into somebody else's box. So it was a really cool experience to have that on the other side of that, instead of kind of being the believer, but to actually have someone have that kind of belief in you. So you putting this in the chat that you're a believer in us is pretty awesome and pretty cool. So that wasn't on my list, but I'm happy that you shared that. Part of the things that I really believe in is just being present and letting things go where they go. So you're going to probably get a lot of that today, because that's just the kind of week I've had, and here we are. But I will start with some of the things that I have learned this week. One of those is really that power of really being present, really sticking to what's happening now and not getting kind of lost in either memories from the past or projecting things into the future. It really, really makes a difference. And whether I'm doing that kind of in my business life or in my personal life, holy, what a difference does that make? So it's something I'm really aware of and practicing, I guess, a lot, because I see just how differently things can be when I'm in that space. A lot less stress, a lot less anxiety, a lot less of everything if I just here and now. So that's one thing. And then also the power of our mindset and that mental chatter that can just really drag us out of stuff. The other thing that some of you may or may not know is, so tonight I'm actually starting training with Wim Hof, who's like the Iceman, does the cold plunge stuff, those kinds of things. So prior to that, I was just kind of practicing my cold plunging things into the river by my house. And the first time I went, I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. Oh, my feet hurt. Like all this stuff, this going on in my brain. But and then I stopped for a second, like I had an awareness there and caught the space. I was like, wait a second, stop talking. you're making this harder than it has to be. But everything that I'm saying in my mind is making this harder. So when I just shut up myself, like, I was like, oh, it became so much easier. I'm like, let the body do what the body does. The body knows how to do this. And so I was just like, dunk in the water. And then I'm like kind of swimming around, and it was so much easier. But I think the important part of that was recognizing how I was creating this chatter in my brain, or listening to it, whatever you want to call it, that was so not serving me. And then I'm like, oh, I'm wondering where else I'm doing this. Probably a lot. So being present, creating space, noticing when that chatter is coming in that is absolutely not serving me. And I think we all do this at points throughout our day in our businesses. Am I paying attention to that often? I don't know, but it's a really good thing to start paying attention to what's happening in my mind. Where am I creating? And when I think about even some, like we did our workshop on the weekend, which some of you were at, and I think about those spaces where when things happen and our little mind starts going crazy, and we either put ourselves in a box or we put someone else in a box, we kind of screw ourselves whenever we do that, instead of going, oh, are the thoughts I'm thinking either about myself or someone else, are they helping me or are they hurting me? And are they moving me where I want to go, or are they just putting up more obstacles? But it takes that awareness to recognize when we are having those thoughts. And I talk a lot about kind of creating that space, creating that gap. How can I create just enough space where I can stop and go, oh, this is what's going on, and not just kind of run into autopilot. So that was really present for me this week. Do you want to share what you learned this week?
I just want to talk about that mind chatter thing.
Oh, cool. Let's do that.
This is part. It's kind of, sometimes our best strengths are also our greatest weaknesses, right? It's kind of like a strength overdone becomes a weakness, or at least that's kind of been my experience. I have a tendency to look for problems so that I can solve them. So it's on the one hand, it's a negative sort of a mindset. I'm looking for what's wrong with this? How can I make it better? What's wrong with this? How can I make it better? Why isn't this working? How can it be better? Or even, this is going really well. How can I make this better, right? Like, I'm always looking for, how can I make it better? What's going wrong with it? That kind of thing. And it's just, that can really turn in, like, it's a negative kind of a lens to look at the world through. In some ways, it's awesome. If I'm sitting with a client and helping them out with their marketing, figuring out, okay, where is this not working? What needs to be fixed? What needs to be improved? Where's the problem? How do we solve it? Super helpful. Super helpful. That's kind of that's value that I offer.
Yeah.
Right? Totally awesome. And at the same time, it also means I'm constantly either looking for problems or trying to solve problems. And in case you haven't noticed yet, there's a whole lot of problems in the world, right? And sometimes my mind chatter goes into that place of, it's too much, it's overwhelming, I can't fix it all, I can't fix any of it, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing the right things, and it's just, and I go down into the cycle of despair. And this is, this noticing, paying attention, where's my mood going, right? So I can notice that I have days where I'm kind of like high as a kite. It's like, oh, things are awesome. Things are awesome. I'm excited, moving forward, doing stuff. I'm excited about my work. I'm excited about my life. I'm excited about everything. And then other days I can be in this kind of pit of despair. And, like we just saw the chat flash up about it's paralyzing, and it is, right? And when I do manage to take a step back and just look at the situation, I go, wow, what has changed in the 12 hours from here to there? And it's all in here. It's all what I'm telling myself. It's this mental chatter thing is huge. Like it's just huge, and it's little thing. Like this is a big thing. There's also little things. Oh man, there's a lot of appointments on my calendar this week. Oh, there's a lot of peopling happening this week. Like for me, the introvert, it's like, oh, there's a lot of peopling happening this week. My week is busy. I've got a lot of stuff to do. I don't know that I can get it all done. It's those like that. Those thoughts can be paralyzing too. And it's just like some of the things I say. Oh, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And it's just like, and when I can put that away and just be present, and it's like, what's the next right step? What's next? What do I focus on right now? What do I move forward on right now? And it's like my partner keeps telling me, it's like, you need to keep your hands busy, Patty. You're spending too much time thinking. It's like, yeah, think. So yeah, the thinking thing, probably my best feature, right? And also my worst enemy at times.
So true, right? It's like that knowing when, like, knowledge is very necessary. Thinking, it has its place. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't. And it's knowing, when is that? Where is the right time for it? And where is it just really not working so well for me right now? And I think that's where that practice comes in of, how do I almost train myself to be more present? Instead of constant, like you say, looking at the calendar and going, oh my God, there's so many appointments on here right now. I'm going to do this. I better make time to nap. I better schedule in a nap or something, instead of being like, right now, all I have right now is this show. That's it. Right now, I just have to be present right here. Everything else, when that moment happens, it will happen, or it won't. Who knows? But all we really have it is right now. And now, do you find that after you've had, let's say, like you're flying high, and it's like because you have looking for the problem, do you find that after you've had a really, really like maybe awesome day, that then you go totally the opposite way because you're looking, there has to be a problem here somewhere?
I hadn't thought about it in that way exactly, but I do know that when I'm just depleted at the end of the day, it's like if I have a busy day, the day itself will be awesome.
Yeah.
The day itself will be awesome when I'm busy. And that's where my mind lies to me too. It says, oh, your calendar's full of stuff. There's a lot of peopling this week. This is going to be really hard. My reality is those weeks are awesome because my hands are busy. I don't have time. I can focus on specific problems with my clients. I can put my busy mind to work in a constructive way. It's when the weeks are less busy and my mind goes, that's awesome, that they are not awesome because my hands aren't busy, so my thoughts go in the wrong place.
Yeah.
But I do know that at the end of the day, like especially if my hands have been busy all day, I'm just tired and drained, and I know that my thoughts go in a bad place there. And I just know it's like, oh, this will all be better in the morning. All I need is to sleep. I just need to recover. So there's that. Like that's just a consistent pattern.
Yeah.
It's like come the end of the day, I'm just mentally tired.
I think that's a really great awareness too, of knowing that, oh, I know when I'm really tired, that what I really need is to just shut off and sleep and check out and not actually pay too much attention to the thoughts that are going on. Because I think that goes back to that awareness of ourselves and what our patterns are. Like we talked a lot about that this weekend too, about it was the you-ness, right? What are our own patterns, our personalities, how we show up, the things that we do. And I think that's that inner work, right? That inner work is so important. And often we sometimes, I think, don't give it the weight that it actually deserves, that it would make our lives easier if we spend some time in that self-reflection and really looking at, what does really work for me? I know if I'm overtired, probably not the best time to start making decisions for things. Probably the best time for me to just shut down, go to sleep. I know my mind's going to be busy and chattery, and that's okay. I'll just let it do its thing, and in the morning it will be different. But without that awareness of that, I think that's where things can just really spiral out of control. And then it's like, now I'm super upset, or I'm now the whole world sucks. I've dived into a depression, even in that just evening kind of thing, because I'm just not aware. I'm just actually at the mercy of my mindless chatter that's going on.
Yeah.
Like it's really crazy. A chattering mind is not a very beautiful thing. Not always, that's for sure. But it's that awareness piece, and the self-awareness.
Self-awareness, I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. Um, One of the things I've discovered from 25 years, I guess, of working on myself is that I can invest a ton of energy trying to be somebody that I'm not, like just trying to be another person, trying to, oh, I have a funny story. It might be a funny story. Um, there's this fellow, I think his name's David Allen, wrote a book called Getting Things Done. It's all about getting organized and filing and getting to inbox zero every day, and creating these tickle files and that. And anyhow, it was just my own self-awareness, my own, what I would call self-criticism is, you're not organized, Patty, and have to do something to be organized. So it's like this getting things done. I'm going to do the getting things done methodology. This guy's an expert on it. The book is step-by-step how to implement this whole process. So he says in the book, I think it was something like, take 3 days to organize all your shit, right? So like, okay, so I blocked off 3 days in my calendar. I'm committed. I'm full on committed. I'm going to make this change. I'm going to become a different person, basically. Didn't realize, but it's like, this is a problem. I'm going to solve it. So I've got this thing, and he's talking about creating these file folders. Like, this is back, like, this is how long ago it was. This was not about organizing computer files so much as organizing physical paper files kind of thing. So I had I got this file drawer. I got color coded filing cabinet, like filing files and tabs, and I'm making the tabs. And he says, do this tickle file thing. You put 31 folders and you put the stuff that you're going to do on that day. And he says, then all you have to do in the morning is you pull out today's file and you open it up, and there's the stuff you need to do. And he's like, here's how you organize your email, and you have these special email folders, and then you put your emails in these according to when you have to respond to them, and categories of prioritization and all this stuff, right? So step one was basically to pull out everything and put it in a pile, because then you're going to very neatly organize stuff and throw out all the junk, right? Well, I got as far as destroying my entire office. I had papers all over the place. And I made these tickle files, and I was starting to put things in them. I gave up partway through. Like, I couldn't do it. It was making me physically ill. It was just like, I couldn't do it. It was so not me. And I was just lost and frustrated. And in the end, all I managed to do was create this enormous mess for myself. I couldn't find anything that I needed. I couldn't find any of my emails. I filed them away in these folders, and I didn't know what emails were in which folders. And all of the problems that it promised that it would solve for me were the complete opposite. Like, it just made things worse. Like, I just couldn't function that way. So eventually, I kind of went back to my old ways of being a mess. And then I had a lunch with a really smart colleague from the university where I was contracting at a university, and she was super smart. And she goes, Patty, she says, that kind of system, it doesn't work for everybody. Like, some people need that kind of a system. But she says, I'm going to send you an article. And she sent me this like scholarly kind of article that talked about why people with messy desks were brilliant. So anyhow, I printed out this article and I posted it on my wall to remind me of this. But it basically said that if you have a more creative kind of a personality type, that you actually need physical reminders of what you're working on in order to be productive. And And what my friend told me at the time, she says, Patty, the purpose of filing is so that you can find what you need when you need it. It's not about making sure that every little scrap of information or stuff that you have is put away neatly. It's making sure that you can find stuff when you need it. And she says people who don't like filing often like piling. And she says, just put things in piles that make logical sense to you. And then when you need something, she says it doesn't take that long to rifle through a pile if you know that the thing is in the pile. Well, didn't that just change my life?
So true. Even as you're describing it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling overwhelmed by that. I'm feeling overwhelmed by having to pull everything out and put it in these folders and then go and find it. Because I'm much like, I'm looking around my office right now and I'm like, yep, there's my little piles, but I know exactly where everything is that I need to find. It's so much easier for me.
Exactly. And I'm sure that David Allen would I don't know. I think he would combust or something if he had to work the way we work, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like I've just accepted it. It's like I'm a piler, not a filer.
Yeah.
And it's just as long as I know what junk drawer I put something in, and I have an amazing capacity to remember where I put it. I just do. It's not neatly filed away somewhere, and I can almost guarantee that I neatly file it away somewhere, I'm going to forget it forever.
I can almost guarantee that because I have something that I have put away in a place where I wouldn't forget it that made complete sense. I have yet to find it. And I'm assuming that eventually my brain will remember where I put it, but for now it hasn't. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I just kept doing what I would normally do, I would know exactly where that thing is. Exactly.
Yeah.
But because I was trying to be like you're supposed to be, I have no idea what I've done with it. It's in a safe place somewhere. I just don't know where that safe place is yet.
One little tip. I heard this tip recently. I thought it was brilliant. When you do find the thing in the safe place, finally,
Yep.
reposition it in the first place you looked for it.
Smart. Yes, exactly. I could think about exactly where it would be right now if it was in that first place where I thought it would be.
Yeah. So when you locate it, put it there.
Which I think this is so good because this is literally what we were talking about on the weekend, right? About how do we create a business that works with actually who we are instead of trying to fit into someone else's box. And one of the things we noticed on the weekend was that we had people with us who really are, I think, natural born leaders. Like they really are that, they want to be, just for lack of a better word, in the spotlight, the center of attention. They like that place where it is really about them. And yet they have this struggle going on because they aren't really willing to embrace it and probably because however they were raised, whatever's been going on in their life, in their conditioning, they have been taught that there's something about that that's wrong. You shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't be seeking attention. You shouldn't want all the attention on you. It should be about other people. And yet their innate personality is to take that position. And I look at some of them in the group and I was like, man, if they did that, their life and their business would be so much easier. And the world needs people like that. Look, Tony Robbins is a look at me kind of guy. Like, can you imagine Tony Robbins not like that? He would not be who he is if he wasn't like that. Like, I think he fully embraces that. And I was telling Patty, I didn't sleep super well last night, so I was listening to some YouTubes early in the morning, and Oprah was talking about the reason she believes she is where she is because she just showed up as fully who she is, like embraced all of it. She knew her career path was going to have something to do about television. She knew it. I'm going to be on television. That's where I'm going to share my message. That's what I'm going to do my thing. I will be on TV. And she just embraced it. And she says, all of my fame, all of my success is because I showed up every time as who I am. And I think that's a lesson that we can really all really learn from if we learn to embrace it. And often it's not easy. Like, it's sometimes not easy to be like, especially if you're in a room full of super organized people. I love my messy desk. I'm taking it.
Mhm.
Like, that's just the way it is, you know? And we've talked about this a lot. Like, how do we create our business and do things that work well with who we are? Like, I have a friend of mine, and she's like, Georgie, I wish I was as self-disciplined as you are. I'm like, I would never describe myself as self-disciplined. She's like, yeah, but you get up and you go for these runs. And I'm like, that doesn't make me self-disciplined. I said, I've just learned how to hack me or work with me. I know that I can work a plan. I know that if I want to do something, if someone gives me this, and this, I can do that. Also, I know if someone's looking for that little piece of information or watching me kind of do it, I'm going to do it. So, but I've learned what works for me to make that happen. It's not that I am self-disciplined, because I would literally not put a bag of potato chips in front of me. I'll show you how unself-disciplined I can be. You know, I wouldn't describe myself like that. However, I do know how to set myself up to work within me, which I think is really important, which only comes through the inner work, paying attention. What are the things I love to do? How well do I know me?
Absolutely. Because here I am being the problem solver again. It's like that's the magical thing. It's not like, how do I become more like David Allen and become organized in that way, but how do I do organization the Patty way?
Exactly.
And a lot of the messaging that we get from the outside world is, especially those of us that are outliers, like that's, you know, that's one of the things about the people that we work with, about us, is we don't fit into our dominant culture, really. Like, that's a big piece of why this is the U-shaped business and why we do things the way we do it, is the outside world doesn't function the way we function. And because of that, we get a lot of messaging saying that we're too sensitive, we're too idealistic, we procrastinate too much, we're too messy, we're too disorganized. You know, for some of the people, you know, like you're saying about the leadership, they're probably like, you're too much, you're talking too much, you're taking up too much space, you're asking for too much attention, you're being bossy. This is often a kind of a gendered piece of feedback that we get. Is Yeah, you get a lot of that negative stuff. I may have grown up in a household where we're being trained out of the way that we actually are, trying to fit in to be more like our caregivers think we should be. And often it's because that's how their parents thought that they should be. They might not fit that mold either, but they've been conditioned and trained into it. So this is a lot of what we're up against in this world, is a whole lot of input that says that we're not good enough the way we are, we're not doing things right, that we're being criticized sometimes for some of our best qualities. You know, the number of times I heard, nobody cares what you think, Patty. The number of times, that was the radio station going on in my house. Nobody cares what you think. Shut up. It's just,
Yeah, and then think about then how that little voice is going to show up in your head every time you go to tell somebody what you think.
yeah.
Right? And I'm like, oh my God, please tell me what you think. Please tell me what you think. I want to know what you think. Please make sense of all this. Please fix my problems. Please solve my problems. Give me the words. Come on. I got so much going on here. I don't know how to make sense of it. Yeah, it's so amazing. And I think that the more we can just sort of like recognize that stuff as it shows up in the moment, the quicker we can move through things and realize that, that's actually not even me that's thinking that. It's like all this conditioning and someone else that's put that on top of me. But what I'd really love is to be like, hey, yeah, I want to lead this group. Or like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to just embrace that role and step into it and be like, okay, here's my show. Here's my advice column. Here's what I think.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in doing a group coaching or something like that. What I really want to do is tell people what to do, you
Yeah.
know? And then we figure out how to do that, obviously in a nice, caring, kind way, but working with people's strengths.
Absolutely. And then you can find, and that's the thing, then you can find role models and other people that are doing that. And you can look to those people and you can go, yeah, like it's like, I want to be like Oprah. And it's like, all right, if that, you know, like if that's how you're built, if that's why you're here, and you know, you can find role models, and there'll be all kinds of role models that would uh, that would be a good fit for you. And conversely, the other piece of this, if you're paying a lot of attention to those kind of role models, and we see, like, those are the people we see the most anyhow. It's like, it kind of surprises me when the people are like, oh, I want to be the leader. I want to tell people what to do. I want to be the center of attention, and I want to, you know, have my own show and all of this. We get a lot of input that says we should do that. Like that's what you need to do to be successful, because the people who are doing that are the ones we see. So it's kind of surprising to me. It's like, oh, there's the people trying to hold back from that. It's like, interesting. And then there's the others who are trying to do that, and it's not a good fit, because there are some of us that would rather be the supporting people. They'd rather work in the background. They'd rather support somebody else. They're more comfortable working with people one-to-one in quieter sort of a way. They don't want their face all over the internet. They just want to do their good work with their clients and just quietly go about their business. Like, that's okay too. Like, it's like, where are you drawn? Why are you here? It's like, the more you know about yourself, the more you know, spend some time, like 16personalities.com, go and do that task to get some information, and then look at that. It's going to show you, you know, your personality type, and it might not be 100% matched, but it can give you some good insight. And sometimes it's just really nice to get that report back and go, oh, look at that, my type is 2% of the population. Like, we had a couple of people, we had them do it for the workshop, and then when they sent them in, they're like, oh, it says my type is like 2% of the population. It's like, when you realize that, you're like, oh, there are other people like me. And no wonder I feel like a little bit of an outcast. And, you know, just being able to read something to go, wow, look at this. Here are your strengths. Here are your weaknesses. And you're like, oh, yeah, I knew what my weaknesses were because everyone tells me, but I don't see these strengths. But the report gives you some information, right? So doing that kind of stuff and just taking from it what's valuable. And sometimes it's just valuable to know you're an outlier. And I think it's really valuable to know that there are others like you. When I got my report, like, for the first time, I'm like, oh my God, like, really? This is me. This is describing me. And then it's like, yeah, you're like, your type is 3% of the population, unless you're a woman, in which case it's less. It's even more rare, right? So I'm like, okay, good to know. This explains a whole lot, like a whole lot, about who I am and why I'm different and why I think the way I do. And then it's like, oh, you got these strengths, and you're good. You're a creative problem solver. And I'm like, I'm a creative problem solver. Right? It's just like, you're an introvert. You need to recharge on your own. Like, oh, I'm an introvert. No wonder I don't like, you know, going to parties.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it's just so lovely and normalizing, you know? And then it's like, when you know that, you go, oh, there are other people like me. Then you can find your people. And it's just kind of reassuring, like, to have that information. And it can help with that, you know, can help with the self-reflection. It's like, in a way, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. And it gives you something to go on. You can look at this and go, well, what fits and what doesn't? Is there something here that's true for me? How
So
can I use this?
this is perfect. It leads into I have a list of questions from people, right? It's like, how do I determine the right business model for me? It's all of this, right? It's doing the inner work. It's knowing your personality. It's knowing how you work best. Never mind what anybody else says, but really getting clear about your own self and stuff and working within that as opposed to against it.
Yeah.
Like,
And what lights you up? It's like, where's the energy?
exactly.
Like, are you looking at the marketing that you're thinking about doing, and you're going, oh boy, I can hardly wait. This is awesome. I'm going to 12 networking events this week. I can hardly, this is amazing. It's like everybody's meeting on Zoom. I can go to a networking event right across the country or in another country. I can meet some new people via Zoom. How awesome. I don't have to go there, and I can go and mix and mingle with people. And somebody else is like, oh, this is so exciting. I'm putting stuff up on Facebook, and I'm seeing that when I write blog posts on a regular basis, that these blog posts can eventually be a book. It's just like, the person who's excited about the going to the networking events in the other country might be less excited about writing a book, right? It's a different kind of a personality. It's like, what lights you up? Like, is there something about your marketing that can get you excited? Like, and to notice that. It's like, wow, that was really easy. Wow, that was really fun. I really want to do this. I remember having somebody, I was coaching a client a few years ago, and she's like, she says, social media. I have to do social media. I hate social media. I hate it. I don't want to show up on camera. I don't want to write stuff. Why couldn't things be just like the good old days where you could pick up the phone and call people? I'm like, you like calling people? I love calling people. She says, I used to do cold calling in my previous sales job. It was the best. I'm like, here's your permission slip. You have permission to call people. It's totally allowed. You're allowed to call people. And especially, I mean, she's selling into organizations, right? Into corporations. It's like, they're expecting you to call them. You can call people. You don't have to do social media. Like, as I know in the chat, INTPs, you love calling people. Yeah, exactly. It's like, because I'm like, I wish I had the superpower of loving to call people, and I don't have it. And a lot of times, this is what we do with our personality. It's like, we look at our strengths and we go, our strengths suck. I don't want these strengths. I want her strengths. And it's like, right there in that moment on that call, I'm like, I want your strengths. That calling people thing, that's fast. That's direct. That's going to work faster than this social media thing that you're talking about. It's like, I wish I had that strength. I would be using it. But a lot of people, they're like, oh, social media, because they're seeing where they're weak rather than where they're strong, which is not helpful.
No.
It's like, embrace it. And sometimes it can be helpful to talk to somebody who is not your type so that they can point out that loving to call people. That's an awesome thing. And that, or, we're joking about the organization, the David Allen thing, and it's just like, I'm hoping that there's some people listening to this that are like, hang on a second, I'm really good at filing. My desk is always clean. I've got color-coded systems, and I love to file, and I love to keep things organized. I'm really good at it. And it's like, if that's you, that is a strength. It's a superpower. It's something that you might even be able to use in your work with your clients. Like, that's awesome. Leverage that. How can you get more out of that? How can that support you even more?
So true. And I think it's such a good point to just what you said, right, is to recognize that we all have our own ways. And it's easy to get stuck in a thing of thinking our way's the right way too, but it's having that acceptance that everybody has their own ways of doing things. And that's totally okay. Like, I'm looking in the chat here, and someone was saying that they love that they don't have to be on video but they can make comments in the chat with us. So awesome. You know, and it's easy sometimes to think, oh, people aren't talking to us. They must not, maybe I need to make sure that they know they can talk or be on camera or whatever it is. And really, maybe they're quite okay with just being where they are. But we often see things through our own filter and our own lens. And like I say, sometimes it's great, and sometimes it can really stop us from moving forward and getting where we want to go. Like I think of us in this show. You and I, if we did a show for the sake of doing a show and having like, oh, everybody look at us, it would never work. We can't do it. We just can't do it. But knowing that we have people here, like I look at for me, I'm like, oh, there's people here. I can support people. They ask questions. It's really, I like it when there's stuff in the chat. I love it when you're asking questions. It's like, oh, okay, that's really good. Let me see how I can do that. I know that you like to teach when there's people there. And so we both know we suck trying to do just recorded videos. We tried it and we suck. We need people. So it's like, how do we basically hack ourselves, because we want to do this. We want to support people. We know it's a good form of marketing for us. There's some other things we have to hack ourselves on to make it, to leverage it more. However, we're getting there through that exploration and really looking at ourselves and like, okay, so we know we like this. It's still fun. We've got these pieces. We did it so we could use it, but we're not really using it in the way that we could. So how do we work with who we are to do that? You know, so there's so many ways, but until we know us, we can get stuck, like really, really stuck. So yeah, but we really do, like, I love the chat. I love when there's engagement. I love when there's questions. I love free flow conversation. I'm like, this is awesome. Slides stress me a little bit. Like, I'm like, oh God, I gotta make those slides again. Like, talking about doing what you love to do. Sometimes they flow great and sometimes they just don't. And I'm like, I like it when it goes like this. And then I'm sitting here, right? And I'm like, oh, that's one of my question. Look at how it's just flowed right into that. That's awesome. You know?
I know this is going to shock you, but I'm like, no slides.
I know.
Oh, here, got a comment about how they like are laughing, right? Even my cat is laughing, and it's like, I am just so happy that I could be entertaining a kitty cat. No slides. Yeah, Georgie tells me, oh, we're going without slides this morning, and I'm like,
And in this moment, I'm realizing, oh, the slides are kind of good, because I totally forgot about the quote of the day. I totally forgot about the permission slip. I probably could have given you 2 slides.
See, we need some structure.
We need some structure. I do have a permission slip, though I just didn't make a slide for it. My permission slip is that for you to create the business that you want based on you. You have permission to fully embrace who you are completely unapologetically if you choose to. That's my permission slip.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make one and make it a post or something.
Well, I'm thinking that that's kind of like the overarching U-shaped business permission slip, really, is. And I can see how doing that is, it's frightening. Like, or it can be frightening. So here I am with my negative filter kind of thing. But showing up as who you really are, especially when you're a little on the outlier kind of side, is it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, can
right?
be. Yeah. It's like, yeah. And that's the reality. And it's like, often when I think about this, this self-employment thing, the U-shaped business, I often think that my boxes and arrows side of it is so much the easy part. People think that marketing and sales and business is overwhelming, but it's not really. It's not that, I mean, it's non-trivial. There's definitely some moving parts to it, but the trickiest part for those of us who are outliers, like when we did that, it was so great on the workshop on the weekend. We got people to list, what are the characteristics of a successful business? What are we told that we need to do? And it was like very much about, it's about money, and it's about hustle, and it's about sleeping on the office floor and putting in all of this time, and technology and funnels and lying and hyping and pushing and all of these things. It's like, if you look at that and go, oh, excellent, that's what I need to do, off I go and do it. Like, there's lots of people who are built for that, and they are extremely successful running that playbook. They just are. And they don't have the kinds of fears and holdbacks and issues that our people have. Like, that's a playbook that works. We're not gonna deny it. If you're not built that way, it's more difficult. And the bigger part of it is the overcoming the fear of putting yourself out there, getting yourself to do stuff when you're not naturally a go-getter, when you're not a hustle kind of person. Um, getting out of your own way in some ways. It's a mind stuff. It's figuring out a path that fits for you, which often means ignoring all of the popular advice, which is going to mean anytime you talk to other people who are following the hustle playbook, they're going to look at you going, oh, you're not working enough, you're not putting in enough time, you should really do this program, you need to 10x, you need to 100x, you need to go. And we got some loud voices saying that, and you go to some entrepreneur networking group and you will meet people face to face, and they're going to tell you that. And it's like, that's hard. Going your own path, focusing on what works for you. It's hard.
It is.
Showing up as who you really are, hard.
And I think that's where that paying attention to those little thoughts and that mind chatter that's happening, and wondering or catching it and being aware of, oh, that's actually someone else's opinion that's in my brain right now that I'm listening to. Do I want to do that? I think that's where finding a group of people that believe what you believe, and who you fit in with, where you can fit in without fitting in. I think that's so important. And it almost goes back to the very beginning. It's finding those people who believe in you just because of who you are, not because you're following this methodology or that methodology, but because we believe that as the human that you are, you can do this. Like, I think it makes such a difference, because often, and Patty talks about this a lot, we stop ourselves because we're worried about what our critics are going to say, instead of marketing or speaking to the people who actually want to hear what we have to say. But sometimes that critic voice is so loud, it can be paralyzing. And I think that's where that belief and that support from people who get it is so important, until we find that almost that strength within ourselves to be like, yeah, you know what? I get it. I'm different. I may be weird to some people. To some people, I'm totally normal. But until we can find that kind of inner strength, it's nice to have that group that can kind of be like, it's okay. I get that. I'm kind of like that too. And it feels weird and it feels awkward. And sometimes, yeah, I don't know how to do it either. But I know if there's someone else kind of there doing it with me, it's easier. Like, it just, I love how things just kind of come full circle. It is what it is. If you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to put them in there. I realize that we only have 7 minutes left of this. I don't really know how this is going to go, kind of thing. But literally, when I look at my list, we've literally almost hit pretty much every little thing that was on there, which is way cool, because that's just how kind of life works in my world. I believe that. So, yeah.
I think that maybe one of the biggest problems we face right now, like in terms of, running your own business, getting something off the ground, building a U-shaped business, is this overwhelming amount of input, like the number of people that that they're confused. This expert says do that. This other expert says do the other thing. It's like there's a zillion different paths to get from here to where you want to go. That's the non-trivial side of it. It's like there are a lot of options. You can't do everything. It's not possible. And you can find, you can find your own way. But part of it is this overwhelming information. And I think sometimes we set ourselves up for failure by continuing to give the not fitting information, people, voices, space in our head. Like staying subscribed to newsletters from people where you're like, I don't want to be like that person. Taking programs from people where you're like, I don't really like this person. I don't really like what they stand for, but it seems to work, so I'm going to do it anyhow. Following people on Facebook or on LinkedIn or subscribing, or like however you're getting your input, listening to podcasts or whatever, for people that are basically reinforcing your not enoughness and are giving advice that's not a good fit. And sometimes it's hard to kind of shut those off, especially if it's not like, it's easy to shut off the ones that are 100% not fit, because it's like there'd be zero resonance and you're like, yeah, no thank you. And then for other ones to be like, oh, this one thing that they say all the time really kind of works. This kind of works for me. The rest of it, not so much. And it's just instead seeking out who is who's more in alignment. Who are the people that are succeeding the way I want to succeed? Who are those sorts of voices? And then you discover that there are these kind of ecosystems. Something Pam Slim talks about, ecosystems of businesses that are like-minded and like-valued, and communities that are set up that way. And it's like to let more of those voices in. Let that crowd out your email so that you're getting all of this positive kind of stuff that's in alignment with who you are coming in. And unsubscribe, cut off, stop following the stuff that you already know isn't a fit. This is me talking to myself. It's like my inbox is littered with a lot of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, because I wanted, this is my thing, is kind of the researchy kind of input kind of person. I'm often like, oh, I want to see what all kinds of people say so that I can take it, twist it around, and help my clients with it. But some of that stuff don't need to be taken in.
I think that's such good advice, right? I think it's a great thing to actually go through and kind of inventory what are the things that I am putting in. And I agree. I do think it's good to also check out totally opposing points of view, just to, gain different perspectives, see where people are coming from, realize that that's not what I want, and that's cool that it's where they're coming from. So I think there's definitely, it's an and thing. However, if that's always what's coming in, and you're starting to recognize, wow, maybe I'm having a little more self-doubt, maybe I'm finding a little more challenging to put myself out there, it's probably a really good idea to do that inventory of what's coming in. What am I listening to? What am I reading? What am I watching? And maybe I need to, cut some of that stuff out. Because when you want to go back to looking for more opinions, it's always going to be there. We have the internet. It's not disappearing anytime soon, I don't think. But I think it's a really, really good kind of challenge or project to take on, is just take inventory of what's coming in. What am I putting in there? Especially if you find that you are in that place of a lot of self-doubt and finding it difficult to put yourself out there. Like, create a tight little bubble. Maybe for, I often find it like someone in the chat put, they're just starting to get more in tune with their authentic self and actually let people know that they're creating a U-shaped business. So I often call that's kind of like that incubation phase. And it's really, really important in that phase to make sure that your bubble is tight, that you are sharing those new ideas and you're kind of dipping your toe in the water, that you're sharing that information with people that are going to be supportive, that you are cautious when you are sharing it with people who you know are not going to support you, because it's like a fragile little ecosystem right there, and we need to build it and get it stronger. Let the sprout grow a little bit, you know, where then we have a little more confidence to take on the challenges that are coming in. So if you're in that space, that's where I would just, you know, tighten the bubble, just eliminate everything that's not going to support you until you feel a little more confident. And then you can start opening it up again. But, you know, to start in that space, yeah, it's hard. Like, it's hard. Like, work with the humanness that we are. When we're starting out, we need a little more encouragement. We need a little bit more safety in that space. So do your best to create your safety bubble. It's so important.
Oh, and for my fellow introverts here, permission to not have to spray stuff all over the place right away. Find some supporters, gather an audience of like one person, 2 people, 3 people, start super small. And you know what? Draft some people in. Permission not to spray. Keep it small. Totally okay. Totally okay to stay small and to grow into it as your little sprout comes up, right? But, you know, find some supporters. Yeah, lots of permission slips today.
Lots of permission slips.
We're a minute over. We need to wrap.
We need to wrap it up. Well, thank you all for being here and listening to us chat and have conversations. We'll be back next week with slides, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I think.
But, thanks for hanging in.
Next week is my turn, so there will be slides. Good to do the freewheeling once in a while, then there will be slides.
Then there will be slides, that's right.
See you back here next week, same bat time.
Same bad channel.
Bye now.
Bye.